Lucky for Wolfpack fans, there's been a lot of them, but what has been the top moment of NC State football's offseason?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Wednesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. As we've been talking about a lot recently, there's been a lot of power ranking lists, a lot of grading lists, a lot of off-season buzz to try and pass the time from now until late August. I thought of another good idea here on Wednesday because it's been such an exciting offseason for NC State football. What do we think has been the top moment of all the moments that have occurred here? Now, I consider the offseason to begin after beating UNC. And I know the bowl occurred obviously after that, but bowl season kind of is the offseason in a sense. I understand there's still playing games that matter for that season, but being that the transfer portal is so live in the entire month of December, that is the offseason. So I consider any offseason moment from the end of the regular season after beating the Dirty Foot Club until now. That can include any of the new transfer portal additions, any players that are announced they're coming back, any other offseason news, you name it. So Kenton, I'll let you kick this off here. What has been your top football offseason moment?
There are two, and I know that I'm cheating a little bit, but that's me. I'm channeling my inner Dirty Foot Club. No, but seriously, there are two. The first one, Aiden White announcing that he was coming back. That one cannot be understated for how massive it is for this defense. Because while I love Cisse, and while I think one day he will be a premier lockdown corner in the ACC, I don't think he's quite there yet. I don't think he's quite at that moment where I'm comfortable saying like, hey, that side of the field that he's on, closed for business. And so that was a big deal. But also, for a little bit of levity, a little bit of comedy, something that'll make you chuckle a little bit, I believe we got commitments from the yin and yang of our backfield in like consecutive weeks or something like that. On one day, we get Jordan Waters committing in camouflage and the rain boots, looking like he just got off the boat, you know, getting him the best catfish he could possibly find. Like he's just off the pro fishing tour. He's a pro bass fisher and all that good stuff. And then you get a guy named Hollywood committing on, you know, two guys play the same position. And not only are they the juxtaposition of like their personalities from Hollywood to, you know, a guy that's very country, but also the different ways in which they play the position, right? You think of Waters as a more straight line, one cut, downhill, no frills back. And you think of Smothers more as the more modern, versatile, catching out of the backfield. You can line him up in the slot. He has a ton of speed. He's super quick, super shifty guy. You look at those two committing, and it's something that you got to laugh at. You got to laugh at, and you got to think to yourself, this is a microcosm of what NC State has become, because it's no longer, you know, we always associate ourselves with guys like Waters, with the guy that is the country boy, with the guy that is, you know, the very direct, very straightforward guy. But as NC State moves forward in the modern times, we are getting more of those high-profile skill players, more of the flashy guy, more of that guy that's going to track some cameras and all that with what he does on the field at a high level. So those are the two things that I would probably say. I look at the offseason, and that's the one that I think had the biggest impact and the one that I enjoyed the most, quite frankly. The one that I laughed at, like Hollywood and the guy that looks like he's fresh out the muck.
You know, something that I find hilarious, I've seen quite frequently, honestly, on social media, is the amount of copium from Duke fans saying that Jordan Waters wasn't even our best running back. He wasn't even a top 10 player on our team last year. What are you talking about? He led the team in every single rushing statistic and finished third team all ACC running back. You can continue to move those goalposts and pretend your feelings aren't hurt. Duke fans are very upset they lost a high caliber player to a team right down the street. We intend to use that firepower right back on them because we host Duke this year in Carter Finley. We owe them a little something from that embarrassment this past year. It's very hard
Absolutely.
to narrow it down to one moment, so I think I may also cheat and pick two moments. My first one here, and apologies in advance to all of our defensive players because both of my moments are offensive related. Number one was locking in Casey Concepcion really early in this process. I mean,
That's true.
seemingly right after the regular season ended, we had pen to paper. Look, we need you here. We want you here. We got to get this done pronto. Shout out to Tom Lavolsi, Steve Williams, Savage Wolves, Wolfpack on NIL. They got it done because undoubtedly Casey Concepcion was the number one most important player to return here in 2024. He carried our team for much of the season offensively when the offense was seemingly lost. He was a bright light in what looked like very dull times until KC really burst onto the scene and we went on a 5-game winning streak. So super important to use as recruiting. I don't want to say bait, but kind of. He was kind of recruiting bait, saying, hey, all you young guys in the portal, we have a star here. He was just a freshman. You younger guys looking for somewhere to play, you can make an immediate impact. Look no further than NC State because we just have one of the best players of that category in the country. So it was so important to keep KC locked in, and we got it done right away. So that was undoubtedly one of the most important moments. My second moment, and again, it's really hard to just pick one or two, but for me, it's returning Noah Rogers back home to Raleigh from Ohio State. We've talked a lot about him on here. I honestly don't think you can talk about him enough with the potential that he has that is every bit of through the roof. This guy has the potential to be one of the best wide receivers we have seen here at NC State, at least for an extremely long time. And being that he was one of the top wide receivers to come out of the state of North Carolina in 2022, goes to Ohio State, doesn't play at all, jumps in the portal. We snatched him up immediately to return him home here. That's a big deal. Kind of in the same breath of KC, other talented players want to play with a guy like Noah Rogers. And so you can prop up and say, look, we have elite talent now at the wide receiver position when we were so barren last year, respectfully, but we're so excited about what we have now at the wide receiver position. So for me, locking in KC and then bringing Noah Rogers back home to Raleigh, those are my top two moments of the offseason.
When you think about the receiver room last year, and this is just an objective fact, it's not to knock anybody, not to disrespect anybody. How many players did we have last year, 6 feet or taller, that we felt like could run 4.5 flat or faster?
Just over 6 foot, I can only really think of Takari Collins and Rosner.
And do you think Rosner would run a 4.5 flat?
I do not. I do not.
I'm not sure Takari Collins is there, but, I mean, and now look, Wesley Grimes, Noah Rogers, I mean, those are 2 huge gets, but even the high school guys that we're getting at the receiver position, it's like, whew, there's some dogs coming to hunt. I'll tell you what, when that ball is up in the air, we got some guys on this campus that it's theirs. It's there, okay? You don't throw 50-50 balls to them. You throw 75-25 balls. And so I'm very excited about the offense as well. I'm very excited about the addition of Noah Rogers. You're adding an All-American to your team. An All-American who has not shown himself to be a malcontent, who has not shown himself to be talented, talentless, overrated, any of those things. He was behind a receiving core that featured a top 5 pick in Marvin Harrison Jr. He was, Emeka Egbuka and all those guys. He was in a receiver room where, objectively speaking, you don't look at that receiver room and say, hey, a true freshman is supposed to be playing there. Like, that's just the reality. And so Noah Rogers coming back home, huge deal. Wesley Grimes coming on, huge deal. There is so much to be said here. And we'll get into other offensive weapons later in the show, but what a special offseason this was for NC State. The only thing that can make it more special is what you do in season. That's it.
Yeah. I meant to mention this after you chose Aiden White as one of your moments. Returning Aiden White as well, because he did go in the portal, and it really shocked a lot of NC State fans. And then it was a little bit of a jump scare when he announced that he was actually going to stay here in Raleigh. That is basically the equivalent of landing a 5-star corner out of the portal. At one moment, we did consider him gone. No idea where he was going to land next. But then when he gets back, that is the same as landing that quality player out of the portal. So That cannot be understated, how important it is to get Aiden White back in the red and white for one more season. But now we want to hear from y'all. Tell us what your top offseason moments are for NC State football. And again, it can be anything that occurred after us beating the Dirty Foot Club in late November. We want to hear from you guys. Make sure you jump down in the comment box, comment your answer. Looking forward to a lot of variety of answers. I love to see what people think on this, but let us know your thoughts. Coming up next, we're diving into a whole lot of nothing or a whole lot of something after a quick word from our sponsors. Today's sponsor is FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home big wins of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's right, you heard me correctly. $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and NC State baseball to win the Raleigh Regional this weekend. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Middle portion of our Wednesday show. Now time for a whole lot of nothing or a whole lot of something. 3 topics. We'll tell you exactly where we stand on them. First one here. Although it's been a little bit quiet, MJ Rice has recently been spotted in the background of some pictures in the Dale Center and also was seen in a workout video posted on Twitter where he hit 15 threes in a row. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
Whole lot of something in 2 different directions. Whole lot of something in the positive direction because obviously he's a great player and you want great. Well, he's shown himself to be a very great player when he's rolling at his highest clip. And I've said a million times, I'll say it a million more. You can never have too many good players on your team. But now the other direction, I love the hitting 15 threes. MJ, put that ball on the floor.
Yeah.
We handle, brother, handle, because you're going to be put in positions where you can go up against guys that they may have a size advantage over you, but you will have the quickness and the handle ability over them that can get you to the rim and get you the results that you want. So I love the threes. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with knocking down some threes, but it's like Cat saying that he's shooting 1,500 shots every game during the playoffs, and the TNT crew was getting into him saying, are they all threes? Because they don't need to be threes. You're a big fella. Get down in that paint. And obviously, MJ Rice has a very different game from Karl Anthony Towns. But the point still remains that it's not a bad thing to, get into that, getting your handle tighter, getting your playmaking better. Because when you can finish at the rim the way that MJ Rice does, if you get that handle a little tighter, get your playmaking a little better, you're now a consistent threat at that 3 to 4 spot where it's like, hey, we can run offense through our wing and he can make it happen, a la Darian Sebron when he was rolling. If we had a few more threats to kick the ball out to when he was rolling, how good would that offense have been if we had guys knocking down those shots at a high level, and even better, a guy or two next to him that you could feel really, really comfortable getting the ball to and having them be your lead horse, not on a one-off for here and there basis, but you can feel comfortable with that as well. We currently have that. We have a lot of guys that you feel comfortable with handling the ball and all that. So I'd love to add him into that group. But again, whole lot of something in both directions. The MJ can be special. This team can be special. And like I've always said, MJ is the X factor. He is a guy that if he is really good next year, expect this team to make noise, not just in the ACC tournament, but the NCAA tournament as well again.
Yeah, I agree that this is a whole lot of something for a variety of reasons. One, maybe most importantly, he looks healthy. He's working out. He's working hard. And he's looking like he's working his way back to where that he believes and where probably Coach Keats believes that he should be to be in the position to play meaningful minutes for this team this coming season. So, number one, that's very important, and that is a good sign to see. Number two, basically all the reasons that Kenton just outlined, when he's healthy, and when he's humming and when he's making an impact in this lineup, make no mistake about it, MJ Rice is the X factor for this team. And I remember when he committed to NC State over a year ago, I believe the words I used was he was a program-changing commit. This is a year later, and I still wholeheartedly believe this.
Yeah, same.
The pedigree that he entered with, obviously, went to Kansas, struggled to crack the lineup there, comes back home here to NC State, and I think when he puts it all together, he will be dynamite for the Wolfpack. He's an insane athlete. Obviously, he can shoot it from the outside, but when he puts the ball on the floor, he can get to the rim quickly and with authority. We saw this firsthand in the first game that he played in. I believe that was the Reynolds game where he shook the entire Coliseum with that breakaway dunk. We all certainly know what he's capable of. And I think at some points he's very easily forgotten to an extent, where we're talking so much about roster reconstruction and all these new additions in the transfer portal. We also were talking about the deadline that was creeping up, and there was seemingly no word on what MJ Rice was going to be doing. The deadline passed, still no word came out, and it's like, I guess he's still here. He is still here. He is going to be on this basketball team. And I think when he's healthy and when he's making a difference in this lineup, he is the X factor for NC State returning to the dance and continuing to make a lot of noise. So this is definitely a whole lot of something. Second one here, baseball related. South Carolina, which is the 2 seed in the upcoming Raleigh Regional, they outmeasure NC State in every single major pitching statistic available. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
I would say a whole lot of nothing, because when you look at how skewed those numbers may be from NC State's early season performances, and you look at the difference between the splits from, let's say, before the Louisville series to after, it's night and day. It is really like, who are these new pitchers that have shown up? I need that guy's arm. We could put him in a time machine and take him back to earlier in the year, and you find out it's the same guy. We don't know what has happened, but this team is, this pitching staff in particular, is acting totally different, as the young kids would say, because they are not being that group from earlier where you're like, all right, Amac, Sosa and company, we're going to need Pennington. We're going to need at least 8 runs per game or we've got no shot. They're not pitching in that manner anymore. So, it's exciting to see that.
I actually think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a whole lot of nothing, because entering this regional, all the numbers and so on and so forth, you kind of throw them out. All that matters is what happens between the lines. So the numbers, to a certain extent, they don't mean much. However, like Kenton was also talking about, the early season struggles, they kind of tapered off as the season went on. The bullpen really intensified. A lot of the young arms rose to the occasion, became a source of reliability in many of those late inning ball games. I also think the other half of this, and in it being a little bit a whole lot of something, not so much because of the pitching, but it's because of the offense. I think NC State is a much more balanced offensive team than South Carolina is. South Carolina hit more home runs than NC State this year, but they also struck out a ton more than NC State did. In terms of the length of an entire season, NC State's strikeout rate was honestly pretty impressive. South Carolina's is the complete opposite. They punch out a lot. When you're looking at pitching in particular in this matchup, and again, this is counting chickens a little bit too early, but assuming that we see South Carolina on Saturday, you feel more comfortable in NC State's pitching staff than you would in South Carolina's. And so, despite what the numbers may say, I think NC State has all the tools that they need to not only beat South Carolina, but beat whoever else would stand in their way in this regional and take home their first Raleigh Regional since 2013. So it's a little bit of both, but I tend to lean on a whole lot of nothing here. And third one, Justin Jolie ranks first among all tight ends in missed tackles forced and contested catches. That's in the country, not just in the ACC, not just independent where he played with UConn last year, in the country. And if you haven't heard yet, he's NC State's new tight end. Whole lot of nothing, whole lot of something.
Whole lot of something. I have talked about this young man since day one, and not just because he decided to come on our show. Hey, athletes, if y'all want to come on here, we're not going to speak glowingly of you because you're here. We're going to speak glowingly of you because you're you. But that's neither here nor there. The reality is, this kid is, I really and truly believe, as outstanding of a young man as he is off the field, he's even better on. It is insane how good this young man is when you truly watch the tape and break it down. And by the way, his best game of the season came against who last year?
Tennessee Volunteers.
Oh, Rocket Top, Tennessee. That's where his best game came last year. So it'll be exciting to see if he can repeat that performance, or if not, build upon it based upon what we're going to see in this upcoming season. But even beyond that, and this is me being as respectful as I can to the UConn Huskies, they did not have as many weapons as this NC State team is going to have. Teams could be much more focused on Justin than I think teams will have the ability to for this year's offense. Because again, in Noah Rodgers on one side, you've got a former freshman All-American in KC, potentially in the slot or on the other side. And you've got a touchdown machine in Wesley Grimes, who, I mean, I think he was one of the more underrated gets in all of the ACC in the portal, because many people talk about him as if he's an afterthought. And I'm like, have y'all watched the same young man that I've seen? Because he has the goods. He has all the things. And so this Jolie being who he is in terms of making contested grabs and being a guy who is tough as nails after the catch, I look at him and I say to myself, I don't know how he was not the most coveted tight end in America, but he was the number 2 tight end in the portal, I believe. So, again, he's a freak of nature. To watch him do what he does in the way that he does it is something special to behold, and I can't wait to see him light up the ACC like the 4th of July.
I'm blowing past a whole lot of something. This is a whole lot of everything. And I truly don't know if a lot of NC State fans know what we have in Justin Jolie. I wouldn't change anything for the world, but it was almost a little bit of a shame that we also had the Final Four on the same day as the spring game. It understandably took a lot of eyeballs away from the spring game. For those that did watch the spring game, what you saw is you saw a lot of potential from Justin Jolie. Like Kenta was just talking about, he's a freak of nature. He's not only hard to cover, but once he gets the ball, he's hard to tackle. He's hard to bring down. And when you put him in this offense where you have a Casey Concepcion, a Noah Rodgers, a Wesley Grimes, Jakari Collins, a stable of healthy running backs, and then you have to also cover Justin Jolie, good luck, buddy. I don't know how in the world other teams are going to be able to account for all of these other players, let alone probably the number 1 freak of nature on our team, Justin Jolie. And later on this summer, we'll undoubtedly talk X factors for this upcoming football season. Spoiler alert, I'll go ahead and give you mine. It's Justin Jolie. I think he will be one of the bigger keys to unlocking this offense's potential. And that's such a relief to kind of say that this year, because last year, for those of you that were listening to us all throughout football season, we were banging the table. Please, can we get the tight ends involved? Please, can we throw to Trent Penix? Please, can we throw to Juice Farine? We're not going to have to beg anymore this season because we have one of the best tight ends in all of college football in the red and white. I cannot wait to unleash Justin Jolie on the ACC, Tennessee a second time. I can only imagine they're going to be thrilled when they have to go against him again so early in the season. Justin Jolie, go ahead and mark this down. He will be one of probably the top 3 players to watch for NC State this coming season. Whole lot of everything. Coming up next, we're going to round out our show talking about Utah for some reason. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Last couple minutes of our Wednesday show. Now getting into all of a sudden Utah is being linked to the ACC. To quote the late young Dolph, Kenton, what the hell is this I'm hearing about Utah? Fill me in here because I have not been up to speed about why all of a sudden the Utah Utes, who are joining the Big 12 conference, are now being linked to the ACC in late May. What is going on here?
So the importance of this, and particularly for NC State fans, I need y'all to hear me and hear me well here. The ACC is fine. I know that we don't want to think it. I know that it hurts people to think about this. The ACC is set to make more money than the Big 12 next year and for the next few years. Beyond that, not only is the ACC set to make more money, the pay structure is set up in a way. Remember how I said, hey, if NC State just wins championships, everything will fall their way? A part of the new deal that was negotiated for football means that the incentives can take you if you go get a playoff spot, if you win a game in the playoff, if you win a natty, it takes you from potentially, I believe it's like the bottom of the floor is like 25 or 30 million, up to $70 million. That is a real number that exists in the world that NC State can go get. So why is Utah important to that? Utah wanted to come over as a former conference champion. And by the way, how recent are Utah's conference championships? I was bald for both of them. So this is not something like they won a Pac-12 championship way back when. They used to be in the Mountain West. Utah being willing to pay an early exit fee to the Big 12 to join the ACC is massive, and that tells you something about the stability of this conference.
Talking about likelihood here, Kenton, maybe even a timeline. Number one, do you think Utah is a legitimate option to add to the ACC? And two, if this is real, how soon do you think this might occur?
So, are they a legitimate option to join? Absolutely. I would say that there is a 60-40 chance. And I know that 40 being that they could join. And I know that sounds very minor. It's not. It's not very minor for a team who just signed into a new conference to even be eyeballing our conference and to hear from them, hey, they're disgruntled with their current deal, even though they just signed it. So that's the deal there. Timeline. This timeline could move extremely quick because I don't think that this will be a court case situation. I think that this will be an instant, what do we have to pay to buy it out? Boom, here you go. We're on our way. That's what I think is going to happen here. So honestly and truly, I don't believe that this will be, if Utah is to come, I don't believe that it'll be later than 2026.
I did see a representative for Utah put out a statement on Tuesday basically saying, no, we're not looking at the ACC. We're committed to the Big 12, which translates to there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than I am at liberty to speak about, because that's what all of these teams in the Pac-12 were saying before they immediately had one foot out the door, and then subsequently they picked up the other one and left as well. So
of course Utah isn't looking over here. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Yeah. They aren't looking over here at all.
Yeah, I do think this is something to keep an eye on. As against adding Cal, Stanford, to SMU as I was, I'm somewhat open to adding Utah now. I think that they add a lot athletically. If you're looking logistically in terms of this new look ACC, being that they're on the West Coast, that makes some sense for teams like Cal and Stanford to cut down on travel costs and just overall nightmare of having to travel back and forth across the country seemingly every week. So I don't know. I wouldn't hate the idea of adding Utah to the ACC, but the more often that we keep adding schools from the West Coast, the more I believe that we need to just change the name of the ACC, because it's making less and less sense by the day. But Utah potentially being linked to joining into the ACC is not something I would have had on my bingo card, not just last year, but this year either, considering they are supposed to be joining the Big 12 conference. Just another day in the world of conference realignment. Who knows? Who knows how quickly this may or may not move? Who knows who may follow them potentially in joining the ACC as well? But that'll do it for us here on Wednesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button. Again, drop your comments in the comment box. Tell us what your top moment of NC State football's offseason is or potentially will be as we move on throughout the summer. Let us know what you think about MJ Rice being around the basketball program, South Carolina's pitching being supposedly ahead of NC State's pitching, and Justin Jolie being an absolute freak of nature at the tight end position for NC State. Anything else you have on your mind, be sure to drop it down in the comment box. I'll be sure to get to each and every one of those, and we will see you all on Thursday. Until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.